In any life, we have highs and lows, light and dark, wins and losses. What happens when we encounter that moment in time when what happens next could change everything? Join us as we step into another person's inspirational moment and see how we can connect their experience to ours. This is Greg Stevens, and you're listening to A Shot of Inspiration. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of A Shot of Inspiration. I'm Greg Stevens, your host, and today we have Joey Lye with us, and I'm excited because when I first read about Joey, I heard about her through another person. I didn't know Joey, and as I read, I didn't feel a connection, and I felt like I needed to speak to her before we got on the air. One of the things I'm trying to do in my podcast is make them a little more interesting because I've had such interesting people on, and I'm not a great podcaster yet. I'm great at training, I'm great at public speaking, but I really haven't honed my skill yet as a podcaster. So I'm trying to get more connected with people and bring their great stories out of them. And I sat down with Joey, and actually we sat down and started talking about her career, and immediately I felt that connection that I wanted to have with her. So Joey, thanks for being on the show today. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Greg. I am so pumped to be here with you.
Thanks. Now, Joey, tell us a little about where you're from and a little about your career, how you became a bronze medalist in your work and your athletics, and how you even got there.
Yes. I grew up in Toronto and had a lifelong dream to pursue sports. And that's what I wanted. I actually have a letter that I wrote to myself when I was in the third grade. Our teacher had us write a letter to ourselves, and she mailed it to me many years later. And I had drawn myself in hockey equipment with NHL logos, and I wanted to be a professional athlete. I also have literally in my hands a autobiography that I wrote in high school, and it was titled Future Olympian. Sports were in my soul from the beginning. And I heard about this amazing opportunity that you could go to America and play competitive sport in college. And I pursued that. I ended up playing softball and hockey at Williams College in Massachusetts. When I was getting ready to graduate, I had no idea what I wanted to do. Why not stay invested in sports? So I stayed and coached at my alma mater. And actually, a week before I graduated, I got a call from my parents, and they said, Joey, we've signed you up for a Team Canada tryout. I said, you've done what? I am not going. I had allowed society's view on Division III to take over my brain. And I thought, I'm not ready for this. I'm not good enough. I only played Division III. Thankfully, they made me go to the tryout. I was nervous. I did terribly, to what I thought was terribly, and got an invite to the final camp, to my surprise. Started feeling more comfortable, feeling like maybe I can do this. Maybe I'm meant to be here. I was one of the final cuts. I got sent home. I begged for feedback. I got feedback from the coaches before I left. And for that next year, I worked my tail off. I went early to practice. I stayed late after practice. I was in the weight room. I asked the sprint coach from the track team to work with me. Literally everything that I could do, I did. I went back to the tryout the next year. They had another open tryout and ended up making the team that year. And there started a 12-year career with Team Canada that ended on the podium in Tokyo for the first ever softball medal for Canada at the Olympics. It was a pretty incredible experience. There's obviously a lot of details in there, and I was coaching college all the while. And here we are today, started a new career, now an entrepreneur, speaker, consultant, executive coach, and excited to share everything that I learned along the way with everyone who will listen.
And you're still working with the Canadian Olympic team, correct?
I am, yes. I am on staff with two of my teammates, actually. We retired and started our coaching journey with the national program together. It's a pretty special thing.
That's great. Let's go back to the point when you said your parents actually signed you up, you went, and you really didn't have the confidence. You didn't feel like you did well. And then you still you were the kind of the last cut. And what I look at there is you probably weren't as prepared because your confidence wasn't there. But when you were
Absolutely.
cut in that confidence, you could actually say, hey, I could do this. I wasn't at my best, and I'm really going to really pick up my game. When we get that confidence, it spreads into the rest of our life. So walk us through some of the things you've experienced at that moment and since then with the confidence you've had.
That is no joke, what you just said. Gaining confidence in one area of your life and how that trickles into everything else, it is so powerful. And confidence is a lifelong journey. When I meet people today, they often ask, have you always been confident? And the answer is absolutely not. And it is literally something I work on every single day. Being that close to making the team after doubting that I should be there just lit a new fire within me. And we've already talked about, gave me that thought, maybe I can do this. And creating a support system around me that believed in me just boosted that even more. It is, I can't even list the number of people that have helped me from that moment through the Olympics get to where I was able to get to. It took building a support system intentionally. It took asking for help. It took being intentional. You're probably going to hear that word from me 1 million times. Being intentional about self-talk, about my mindset, about breath work, and implementing small daily habits into my routine. I literally put sticky notes on my mirror, in my car, in the cupboard, in the kitchen that I would see to inspire myself to check in with my brain, tell myself that I'm amazing. I started a routine of every time I would pick up my toothbrush, that was my reminder to look myself in the eye in the mirror and tell myself how amazing I was, that I was on a journey to greatness. I am an amazing person, I'm an amazing softball player. I can do this. And it felt extremely strange, extremely strange. It felt less strange the longer I did it. And I think that honestly, if there's one thing that I could share with the world on this journey, it is check in with your brain, see if you can get used to saying nice things to yourself, talking to yourself in ways like you build up your best friend and being that person for yourself.
Yeah, and I think that's key because no one else is going to build us up. Typically, maybe our family members or mom and dad. We dismiss that a bit. But as we do this, your competition isn't going to build you up. No one else is going to do that for you. And it is difficult. I think many people have imposter syndrome when they try something new. After they've been in it a while is when they get that mastery and they feel that confidence, and then that tends to fade away. But it takes a process to get there. I'd like to hear a little about what it felt like when you first walked in, because I've been in some environments where you walk in, you're the new person, and that's probably the most negative self-talk. And you're not in front of the mirror, you're seeing all the competition the first day you walk in. Tell me a little about that. You can probably imagine it a little. Even though you've had this journey of development, self-confidence, you probably still have that as a lesson. So walk me through that first day when you walked in. What did it look like?
It was terrifying, absolutely terrifying. The team had just come off of an Olympic run. They had lost in the bronze medal game. There were a number of vets who had retired and a number of vets who remained. The team chemistry was terrible. It was cutthroat. It was just an uncomfortable environment to walk into. I am one of the biggest introverts you will ever meet. So I'm uncomfortable walking into any situation that's new where there are lots of people. Then add on the layer of that cutthroat, that unwelcoming environment that we worked really hard to change throughout the years. But that first taste that I had of the culture was not a good one. I literally, trying to perform on the softball field, was shaking. I was so nervous. I could not contain or calm my nerves at all. Dropped balls that I should have caught, made mistakes that I've never made in my life. It is insane how impactful your mindset can be going into a situation and how much your brain can affect how your body functions when you're in your own way.
And tryouts isn't where you make a lot of friends.
It wasn't then.
Yes, yes. It's that team dynamic and everything comes after you get the acceptance. But until that point, you're the enemy. and everyone's going to be shooting for you. And also, everyone's in that fight or flight mode at that moment. Not just you, but everyone else. And I know emotions are high. And so that's when the nerves come up. That's when we make our biggest mistakes. We're not in our creative brain. We're not relaxed. And I can understand, but that's quite a feat to have that kind of a tryout your very first time, the low confidence you had, and then get cut at the last. But that was also a big motivator, because I imagine if you probably been cut first day or something, you probably never pursued it again.
Yeah, maybe not. That feedback would have been hard to take, and yeah, tough to pick myself up from that. But I think having the couple days of that first camp and then having the week-long final tryout to wrap my head around the fact that, okay, I might belong here, gave me that just little possibility
Yeah.
and motivated me to work really hard.
And you had a 12-year run, correct?
Yes.
That's great. Let me ask you, because you said something just a moment ago also, asking for help. I find so often we try to do things on our own. I know I have in my career, and for a long time I looked at it as a weakness to ask for help. Now I see it as it's probably one of the most courageous things we can do. And
Absolutely.
it's the only helpful thing, I think, because we can't do it on our own. So it was easy for you to ask for help, or was it difficult? And when you did, who helped you along the way?
Asking for help is definitely a challenge that I still face today. Now on my entrepreneur journey, I have to do this all over again. Build a support system, find people who are where I want to go, reach out for help, get some feedback. It is a vulnerable position to be in, to say to the world, I need your help.
Yeah.
As a softball player, I think I was in the perfect environment. I was at my alma mater. I was working alongside the coach that I had played for. She was invested in me. That was maybe the easiest ask. Will you come early to practice to do more of the thing that you love doing with me?
Right.
And so that, I think, being on a journey like that around people who are invested in the goal was incredibly helpful and opened that door. And along the way, anyone from my coach to my family to my wife when she came into the picture to strangers. While I was coaching, we traveled a lot, and I would reach out to the schools we were playing at or a school next to our hotel and ask if I could use their gym, explain who I was, what I was doing. Everyone I asked said yes. Such an incredible experience to see the effect that a dream can have on other people, even strangers. And the fact that they're willing to help, they're willing to open their door for me, they're willing to have me come in at random hours of the day to use their facility. They don't know me, they'll probably never see me again. And they were a part of my journey to the podium at the Olympics.
So tell me how their generosity has shown up with you being generous with other people. Because one of the things I found when people are generous with me, it just expands my generosity as well. So share with me some of the generosity you've been able, not because of what others given to you, how that's been paid back in many ways to others. Share some of that with me.
Yes, I think seeing the power that other people's generosity has had on me, the influence it's had, the doors that it's opened for me, literally anybody who asks for a conversation or feedback or assistance in anything, my door is wide open. I am so happy to have those calls. And again, even strangers, there's something so powerful and connecting about being even a tiny little part of somebody's journey, somebody's dream, somebody's vision. And I think that's something that we often forget. We often don't ask for help. We don't reach out to the person who is where we want to be because we're afraid that they'll say no, or we'll be a burden, or we'll be annoying to them, clutter their calendar for something they don't want. So, some of the most amazing connections that I have on both of my journeys came from people who either were seeking help or I reached out to, and maybe I didn't even know them at that time and said, can you help me? One of my current mentors is that person, and we're there for each other now. We've created that relationship where we can reach out at any time and help one another out. And some amazing relationships come from asking for help.
They really do. My mentor coach, John Catalina, he told me, he said, Greg, you're going to find in this that you're going to get yours in the giving. The more you can give out, it's just going to come back to you tenfold. And he's been right for the past 25 years of being a coach. I want to jump to that now with you being an executive coach and the things you're doing. Talk about some of the bridges that your career, your opportunities that have opened up for you because of softball and being on the Olympic team. How have some of those lessons transferred over to some of the executives that you teach here or coach and the development you have for their own personal lives? Can you share little stories of people you've helped in that way?
The three pillars that I work in are mindset, leadership, and team culture. Those are the three things that propelled my athletic career and my life, honestly. And now I have packaged those things up, tied it up with a bow, and work through those same three things with people, both in the sport world and the executive world. It's incredible how many similarities there are between sports and the boardroom. The mindset of it, the leadership piece, bringing a team of people together, finding the magic, creating an environment that is welcoming, that fosters buy-in, that allows individuals to leverage their strengths. And when you have a room full of people who are leaning into their strengths and passing along other opportunities to people that maybe it's not my strength, but it's going to be yours, and just the power that brings to a room and to a team and the trust that builds in the relationships, and how much more exciting it is to show up at work when you've created that environment, that synergy. What I found in sport is when there's clarity around values, when you talk about them every day, when you reward the behaviors that you want to see, that's when the magic happens. And I've seen the same thing in business. It is incredible how aligned those two spaces are. And it is such a joy to bring the lessons that I've learned from the athletic field into the boardroom and empower the leaders to take control, to own their space. And specifically women, I really enjoy empowering. There aren't enough of them. And I enjoy creating an environment where they can connect with other like-minded women, build each other up, find their true voice, lean into their natural talents, and lead the way that feels right for them.
It's interesting because as you were talking about the executive groups, I started thinking back about the tryouts again. I was an athlete years ago as well. But my experience is when I first walk into that boardroom, everyone has that shell of an exterior. And it's so interesting. I find with the executive teams, for me at least, it's harder to get past that in the beginning. But when you get past it, that's when real breakthroughs can happen. But I didn't realize it until I started working with them quite a bit that they have to almost have that because everyone's looking to them. They have to have this feeling that they need to be this. I find, though, when they can get to that space where they can be more vulnerable with their people, their strength really shows up. Do you have the same experience? And then how do you help them bridge that gap from putting up that exterior shell to opening up to be more vulnerable with their other leaders so it can actually go throughout the organization?
I absolutely do see that. There's that shell.
Right.
Yes. And I think it goes back to how society has portrayed leadership and how we believe leadership should look. Leaders should always have the answers. Leaders should never falter. They should not make mistakes. They should always be strong. And I think we're starting to turn a corner in that space. Leaders can look different. The more connected we are on a human level, the more we are going to get out of the people around us. Asking simple questions as leaders. Can we listen a little bit more? Can we be curious? Can we learn about the people around us? Can we understand how different personalities show up in a space, how to communicate with these people on a level that really reaches them, and allow for that personal connection. Because when you have that, the team becomes unstoppable. When you have that connection, that is where the buy-in, the creativity opens up. The people are willing to share their opinions and their voices, and there's just so much more. There's so much untapped potential in so many spaces that we can open up just by having some human connection.
Yeah, I find that with that human connection, people will give you their discretionary effort. And human beings' discretionary effort is almost unlimited, because if they have a passion or a commitment or a loyalty to their leadership or to a group, they'll do those extra things. Where if you have the shell, my experience is that you get compliance, you get people putting in the bare minimum or just enough to raise their career a little each year. Don't want to do it too much. Don't want to go past, because next year they'll want more. That's the mindset of certain organizations. And then you see others where it's just like, let's go, let's do it. How do you bridge that gap for organizations? What do you have a process you go through? And how long does sometimes that process take? Maybe shortest and longest.
It can be a lifelong journey. There are always new people around you, or new projects you're working on, or new things you're discovering about yourself and your organization and the mission and values. I think it is a lifelong journey, starting with the leadership. As a head coach, when I was coaching in college, everything within my program was a reflection of me and how I showed up every single day. Figuring out who I am, really diving deep into who I am as a person, was so incredibly liberating. Figuring out how can I show up authentically as myself, and that empowers others to do the same.
Absolutely. I have a friend, her name is Ingrid Vanderbilt. She has a program called Empowering a Billion Women. And let's talk about that for a second, because I think it's important. I don't come from that perspective. I don't have the challenges that women have. Let's talk about what has it been like to be able to help pull women up, push them forward, inspire them, kind of comfort to the pain that goes along with it. Give us some examples of some people that you've been able to coach and help, and also what it's been like for you doing that.
There was a CEO that I worked with recently, and she had taken over for a man who had been in the position for many years. And the whole organization had this idea of what leadership should look like. She led differently. It was and is a process for the other employees to get used to a different style of leadership after so many years. Figuring out what was underneath herself, like diving deep into herself, uncovering things she didn't even know, didn't realize about herself, learning new strengths that she had that she didn't even realize, and opening that door to be able to lean into those strengths, own those strengths, have conversations with members of her team about that, figure out the strengths of the people around her that they could lean into, that she could lean on them for. And watching that organization evolve was just an incredible thing. There is nothing, for me, there is nothing more satisfying than watching a woman in a leadership role learn more about herself, lean into that, and have comfort in that space, and show up authentically, and the power that has on the people around them. It's just, I can't even put words to describe what that's like.
Well, I can imagine how difficult that was for her as well, because anytime you come into an organization, just even a man, changing things is difficult because people fear change. And it's the one thing constant that will happen, but that we fear change, and fear always distorts. So I'm sure there was a lot of distorted views, and it was probably not just because of the change, but for some people, it was because that she was a woman, and the idea is that, oh, she's this or that, and you have to overcome the stigma of old mindsets. You have to break through some of that, and that takes time, and it takes trust, and it takes some pain for a while. And is there anything you could tell women, things they could do, maybe books they could read, or seminars they could go to actually help support them in that process of growing through in that leadership development program?
I think there are so many groups out there for women. I'm actually starting one myself. I have
Good.
a mastermind for female executives to help
Mhm.
them own the seat they've earned at the table and maximize the potential of the people around them. There are so many groups. There's a group that fits everyone. A simple Google search for women in leadership roles, women in the C-suite, and the network, that support system. We talked about that a while back, that having that support system. And if you don't have that support system, finding it, being intentional with the people that you're surrounding yourself with. There are so many incredible, powerful women out there, and surrounding yourself with those people just helps you realize the power that you have within yourself.
One of the things I run into, not just with executives, but just all people in general anymore, is people taking the time to do that. I think that's one of the biggest barriers. Typically, it's not the investment they have to make, it's the time to invest to get in there. And one of the things I struggle with is, how do you show them that return on their time? I know it's going to happen. I've seen it over and over, but getting people to really realize that when they've never done something like that, how do you show them the bridge that they'll gain more time, that it'll be worth that investment of time, not just the money they put into that?
I think starting small is always a good thing. Start with one group, start with one connection, especially for someone like myself who's super introverted. Maybe I don't need to be around people 24/7. Maybe there are other people who gain energy from that and from surrounding themselves with people all the time. Comes back to knowing yourself. What do you think you need in order to show up as your best self? And if you're not sure, try something.
Yeah.
Just that maybe there's a group that you're not fully sure that you want to join. Reach out and see, can I show up on day one and hold off on the payment or pay a smaller amount in order to test it out first to see if this is something that I jive with. I think there's a lot of flexibility out there if we're willing to ask the question.
That's great. So tell me what you do to energize yourself, because if you're an introvert, you're very opposite of me. I'm 100% extrovert. And so I get my energy from people. Yesterday, I had a full day. And if I stay with people, I can go till late into the evening in business meetings or anything else. The moment I get away, I go down and it takes away my energy. So I have to be with people. How do you gain your energy being an introvert, going in to coach and be around or being around people?
I am super intentional. There's that word again,
Mhm.
intentional about taking time for myself, going to the beach, going for a walk. I have dogs, so it's a good excuse to get out of the house and spend some time by myself, checking out the trees and the houses. I'm always so curious about the colors people choose to paint their house or the landscaping they have. So I take time to look around and take that in. The beach is probably my number one place, hence the move to Florida. We're 2 miles from the beach, can get there at any time, and intentionally scheduling that in. If I don't have time to go spend a couple hours there, pop over there, just take a little walk on the beach, hear the sounds of the ocean, and reconnect with myself to allow me to show up for the people in my life energized.
Great. Tell us what you're doing in your coaching practice, your training. What are you doing right now to get out there? Are you doing one-on-ones? You're talking about the mastermind you have coming up. Do you do executive retreats? So give us a clear view of all the different things, and then also possibly how people can get a hold of you if they're interested.
I do one-on-ones, yes. I do webinars. I do workshops in person. I really appreciate being in person. There's nothing like connecting with humans in a room. I really enjoy that. The mastermind is a 10-session mastermind for 6 executives, 6 women to connect, share their challenges, discover new things about themselves, level up. Ultimately, that program will have an alumni group, and down the road, there will be a retreat. That is the bigger vision. And I'm really excited for that, to build this incredible network that I know it's going to be and grow it to a place where we will have retreats down the road and be able to connect in person and grow on a whole new level.
That's great. Joey, it's been a pleasure having you on. I'm so glad we connected because it really flipped the switch for me. I think you're an amazing person. I really wish you the best. Real quick, some people might just be listening to this. We're going to post things on LinkedIn and maybe Facebook and things like that, social media. Could you just verbalize right now how people could get a hold of you, though, so our listeners who may not be in front of a computer or something could do that?
Yes, hopping on to my website is probably the easiest and most straightforward, joey-lye.com, JOEY-LYE.com.
Okay. Great, Joey. Thank you so much thanks for being a guest. And everyone, thanks. If you'll like and subscribe, we really appreciate it. I'm Greg Stevens, your host of A Shot of Inspiration. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to this episode of A Shot of Inspiration. If you like this or any of our other episodes, make sure you rate it and share it with a friend. This is Greg Stevens, and we look forward to being with you next time. Until then, be bold, be courageous, and respectfully speak your truth.